It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. You're listening to us in your neighborhood from coast to coast and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joan Herman, author, speaker, and your host. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life brings you interviews with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world. It's our goal to educate and empower you so you can live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. We have another great show for you today. Joining me today is a woman who has spent 48 years of her life in a wheelchair. Joni Eareckson Tada was 17 years old when a diving accident left her a quadriplegic. What could have been the end of her story turned out to be a miraculous new beginning. That tragedy thrust Joni on a new life journey, one that has impacted millions of lives. Joni is the founder of Joni and Friends International Disability Center, through which she's an advocate for people with disabilities. She served on the National Council on Disability and the Disability Advisory Committee to the U.S. State Department. She's also an author and a radio host. Welcome, Joni. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, Joan, it's good to be with you, and my goodness, just listening to the introduction, I can't believe I do all those things.
I was going to ask, what don't you do?
Well, I don't tap dance, I don't run, but you know what? One day in heaven, when I get my new glorified body, you'll have to race to catch up with me.
Well, amen to that. And you know, Joni, it's so nice to have you back on the show. It's been a couple of years since you were last here, and when you were, you shared an amazing story of tragedy, faith, triumph, and for our listeners that are unfamiliar with your story, would you please share what happened to you?
Well, it was 48 years ago, almost exactly 48 years ago, that I had graduated from high school in Baltimore, Maryland. I was ready to go to Western Maryland College. I was packing up my suitcases, and my sister Kathy had suggested that she and I spend some sisterly time together, and she invited me for a day at the beach down on the Chesapeake Bay, and I went with her, and it was a day that would change my life. I dove into water and swam out to this raft that was anchored not too far offshore, and unfortunately I did not check the depth of the water, though, and hoisted myself up onto that raft and took a deep dive, a reckless dive into what I quickly found out was extremely shallow water. My head hit a sandbar that snapped my head back, crushing my fourth cervical vertebrae and severing my spinal cord. Immediately, I became a quadriplegic. And I was lying face down in the water, desperately hoping that my sister Kathy would see that I had not surfaced from my dive. Well, unbeknownst to me, Kathy had her back turned to me. She did not even see me take that dive. But just as she was ready to walk out of the water and up onto the beach, a crab bit her toe. And it so startled her that she quickly turned around in the water to scream to me, "Joni, watch out for crabs." And when she did, she saw me floating face down in the water and quickly came swimming after to rescue me. And I'm just so grateful for those little Chesapeake Bay blue crabs. I would not be sitting here talking to you or our friends were it not for that little crab. So that's how God rescued me. But of course, you can imagine, our listeners can imagine, that even though I was rescued, even though I was delivered from certain death, when the doctors told me that I had broken my neck and I would never, ever walk again or have use of my hands, it plummeted me into a deep, deep depression. And it took a couple of years to get up out of that depression, but thankfully they were good Christian friends who surrounded me with their prayers and their support. I had a wonderfully supportive family, And that has made all the difference in the world.
You know, Joni, after I first met you, you had a really profound impact on me. You made me examine my life and the way I viewed things. And to be brutally honest, I was ashamed of myself and the way that I handled a lot of things. You have been able to hold on to your faith and accept God's plan for you no matter what. I mean, you went through this tragedy and then you went on to battle cancer. And sometimes I question why things are happening and I want to know the answers now. And I think so many people are like me. We want to know why things are happening, you know, what the meaning is, what we're supposed to learn, and we want it all on our terms and in our time. And you have been able to maintain your faith throughout all of these hardships. So how are you able to hold on to that faith and not only hold on to the faith, but emerge stronger?
Well, you know, for a long time, I looked at suffering as many of us look at suffering. I thought that when God allowed awful things to happen in your life, of course, it was for his plan and his purpose, and our goal is to find out what that plan and purpose is. And so we scramble and think hard and pray and earnestly seek to understand what God's will is. And not only perhaps, in my case, a broken neck, but in the case of others, perhaps a broken heart, a broken home, some other kind of bad medical report, life situation, circumstance that is distressing or disappointing. We want to understand. We want to fit the puzzle pieces together. We want our lives to be logical and tidy and neat and orderly. And suffering is very, very messy. And I often tell people that I began to make big steps forward in contentment when I began to realize that understanding God's purpose in suffering is not the point. The point is not being able to quickly pull all the puzzle pieces together to get back on the spiritual track. No, I often say that real wisdom is not the ability to figure out the mind of God in any and every painful situation. Real wisdom is trusting God, even when you can't, and especially when you cannot, understand his plan and purpose in a situation. So suffering is a very messy thing. Most of us would like to erase it, escape it, drug it, surgically exorcise it, divorce it, institutionalize it, medicate it. We want to do everything but live with it. But God calls us to daily pick up our cross, as messy as that is, and as difficult as it is, and as illogical as it sometimes can feel, to daily pick it up and follow him and do it with a good attitude. Then you'll be able to experience the wisdom I was talking about. Trusting God, not because you understand his plan and purpose, but simply because you know him, you understand him, you see that he is trustworthy.
Joni, what about someone who's carrying that cross and his or her faith has begun to waver? They're not quite finding God. They're searching, but they don't see him. What advice can you offer to someone to begin their journey of faith?
Well, I think that juncture in life is not a bad place to be. When we are floundering, when we are seeking, when we are unsure of ourselves, or when we are looking, we are in the best place to receive help from God. I know every single morning when I get up in the morning, it is not easy. I have to have somebody come into my bedroom and give me a bed bath and do my toileting routines and, strap on my corset, get me dressed, sit me up in my wheelchair, push me to the bathroom, brush my teeth, brush my hair, and blow my nose. And I'm sometimes so overwhelmed. Like, God, I can't do this. I have no strength for this. I don't want to do this. I'm scared of this. And I bet some of our listeners may feel that way. Mm-hmm. But that's a good place to be, because then when we are weak, when we come to God in all of our weakness, then we discover his strength. Often in the morning I say, Jesus, I can't do quadriplegic today. After 48 years, I am so tired of this. I have no ability for this. I have no energy for this. But you do. I cannot do quadriplegia, but I can do all things through you as you strengthen me. And he gives grace to the humble. And who are the humble? Just people like our listeners who are struggling, who are trying to make their way in the world, who are looking where to take the next step, which door to open, where do I turn, who can help me. When we go to God with those kinds of needs, he is more than happy to meet us at that point of need.
Joni, you're an advocate for people with disabilities. For someone who may be experiencing what you did 48 years ago, or who may be getting a life-changing medical diagnosis, what advice would you offer to help that person move forward?
Well, I think first it's always good to surround yourself with caring friends who will pray for you and cheer you on. Suffering is a very difficult thing, and no one should have to suffer alone. So if you've just received a bad diagnosis, a disappointing medical diagnosis, if your son just broke his neck, or you just learned that you have cancer, or that your husband is a ripe candidate for a stroke or heart attack, surround yourself with caring friends who will pray for you, support you, intercede for you, stand by you, advocate for you. I know when I was going through my toughest days of chemotherapy, often in the chemotherapy lab down at UCLA, I saw people come in for chemotherapy who were by themselves. They had taken the crosstown bus. Now, it may very well be that they had no one to come with them. But if friends are listening, and let's say you do have that difficult diagnosis, don't go it alone. Don't take the crosstown bus by yourself. Find people and begin to cultivate the kind of relationships in which not only you can invest in other people's lives, because there's always other people who suffer worse than you do, but let other people invest in your life. Don't go it alone.
Joni, what would you say to someone who's at the end of his or her rope, who doesn't see any hope or believe that he or she can go on any longer?
Well, there is a marvelous verse in Isaiah chapter 50, verse 10. It says, "Let him who walks in darkness, who does not have a single ray of light, let him trust in the Lord and rely on the name of God." Now, that's a powerful little Bible verse. But it acknowledges right there that God understands. God knows that you are at the end of your rope. God knows you're up against a wall. He assures us, never will I leave you. Never will I forsake you. I think the best place to start, if someone is listening who's at the end of their rope, the best place to start is, as I said a moment ago, find spiritual community, find people who will pray for you. And then secondly, start trusting God. Put up your sails and let the Lord blow the fresh wind of hope into your sails so that you can begin moving forward. But don't ever think that you are alone, because God sees, God knows, God cares. He understands. He resonates with your need, and he'll never leave you or forsake you.
Today's guest has been Joni Eareckson Tada. If you would like to learn more about Joni or her work, you can visit the website joniandfriends.org. That's Joni, Joni, joniandfriends.org. Joni, in about 30 seconds or less, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
Well, my final thoughts are that if some of our listeners are struggling, are feeling disappointment, are overwhelmed by grief or loss, please know that all of us at Joni and Friends want to pray for you and want to provide for you some resources. So you can visit us at joniandfriends.org, and we'll make certain to provide you the help and hope you need.
Joni, thank you so much for coming back on the show. You are such an inspiration, and it is always a pleasure to have you join us.
God bless you. Take care.
We'll be right back. Hi, this is Joan Herman, host of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Did you know that Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life has a free monthly digital magazine that can be read online or emailed to your inbox? Every month, nationally recognized leaders in their field provide information to educate, inspire, and motivate you. We believe in a holistic approach to life, incorporating mind, body, and spirit. Check out a copy of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life 24/7 Visit cyacyl.com and be sure to tell your friends. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that the information provided are the opinions of our guests and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read the digital magazine, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.